host, Christine Marie, and I am so happy to be here with you all tonight. Even as I start, I just had a funny moment realizing that on LinkedIn, it comes on the live actually starts much later than Facebook does. So right now is right about the time when LinkedIn starts the videos. And so it always looks like we're like mid moment, mid speaking when it goes live. So I think that that's funny. But thankfully, Facebook is hooked up correctly. And even as I was seeing the countdown of going live, I was like, I don't think I hooked up Instagram. So I think I'm a little bit all over the place this evening. It's not even morning. And thank you for your graciousness with me in this moment. I'm excited for this conversation tonight. It's really, really an important one. And so I thought I was all centered when I started. I'm going to take a minute and just get myself centered. I've done this a couple of times with you all, but if you are feeling a little bit like me, just a little bit like, what day is it? What's happening? I'm just literally going to close my eyes and just sit with myself in this moment and what I want to talk about with you, because these moments, these shows are so important, and I get notices from folks and messages, and people listen, and it's an honor. It's really, really an honor to have a platform. Even today, a friend of mine who just published his book, he's starting to go live for 90 days. He got a challenge, and this is a responsibility. It's a responsibility for every word that comes out of our mouths, everything that we talk about, everything that is positioned. We can't take it back. Opinions might change, and already I know I've evolved in terms of my own thinking and mind and spirit and soul since, I guess, 105 days ago when I started, and I've evolved since then in so many ways. And so, man, do I ask and hope for grace as I evolve, and also it warrants a responsibility of sorts. So for those reasons, I'm going to just take a moment and get realigned myself. And I'm just going to say a prayer for our conversation tonight. God, thank you for everything that has been revealed to me over the last 4 years, through books, through 𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲, my own internal being taught from within, from you, from others, from pain itself. God, thank you for each one of those teachers. God, I ask for this conversation to be one that is exactly what needs to be discussed in this moment in time, God, that for every person listening right now, for every person who is going to listen, for every person who's going to hear it by way of me or another sharing about just this topic of not living afraid, not living in the box that was set before us as children, not living in the confines of what competitors or colleagues or customers or family is putting before us, and living brave and living large and living exactly and precisely who we were created to be, and coming to know who that is. God, I ask for just clarity of mind. I know that I'm tired, and I ask for help. In Jesus' name, amen. This morning, I had vertical alignment as I do a lot of days, and today it proceeded to be busy and meetings, and I ended up having to cancel a meeting with a dear friend, and it was just a little bit of a wacky day. And then I went to Goodwill because I am going on a cruise tomorrow, and I'm so excited. I'm going to Rome. I'm flying into Rome tomorrow, and I'm going with my family. And I'm feel so excited to experience travel with people I love. I've traveled so much alone. And so I just, man, I'm over the moon about this. So I'm really, really grateful for that. And I was standing in line at Goodwill because I just, honestly, I had returns or drop off or distribution or donations. Yeah, that's the right word. And I show up at Goodwill and I just was like, let's scour this place and just see if I can find some cute little things. So I got some things from Zara and it was fun. And I got these amazing, cute little clothes. And I was standing in line and it was the longest line of my life. And normally I'll leave. And so I was standing there and I just felt like I should stay. So I hopped on my phone and looked at an old reel. Y'all, I have so much content that I've never actually published. It's not good. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress and I'm sure that they'll come out at the right time. But I was looking at this video that I created a month or two ago. Yeah, it was 2 months ago. I was on my way to Johns Hopkins University for an acting job. And I just created this video about my trip into France. And I was just thinking, I was musing in that video about like, if I was going to take away one thing from that trip, one thing. And then I realized that if I was to embody a Frenchman, I would just literally not care what anyone thinks. I would say it. I would do it. I would be bullish. I would be as big or as small as I wanted to be. And it's like they just exist in this almost like bubble of their own making, of their own selves, rather than fitting into a box that someone else has put forward. And it's like the bubble and box comparison, you know, the box that so many, frankly, I'm sure other cultures are like this as well, but really Americans have really put forward, like, fit into this mold. This is where you'll be accepted. And it's across the board, whether you are far right or far left, there's a box. Because the reason why you know there's a box is because you're extricated from the community if you don't fit in it. And so looking at the French culture, they have this bubble of their own making, of their own design, by their own creation, because they truly have this almost like, I really don't care. And that can be for good and for bad, right? For every strength, for every light, there is shadow. And I overextend on the other side of caring too much. That was actually one of the things that was like my forever prayer while I was married. I was like, God, I wish I didn't care so much. Like, this is so painful. It's so hard to care so much for other people. Yet that care turns into codependency, which is effectively, I'm not okay if you're not okay. And it tethers us to the other person on an emotional level where they are never free to have a bad day. And it's highly dangerous for both of us, right? So care can actually be a mask and a guise for codependency that codependency kind of hides behind. Just so we were talking about the light and the shadow, right? So the light for the French is that, and I'm putting, that's such a blanket statement. So I hope you'll extend some grace there. The light is just this ability to walk boldly and proudly and who they are in their own little bubble. And then the shadow of that could perhaps be a lack of care or lack of empathy extended towards others. Yet the degree of care to which we have, so on the opposite end can be too much care. The shadow of that can be codependency, where no one is free on an emotional level. And so as I've been really working to kind of come out of that place, out of that mental state of living as a codependent person, y'all, I was doing more digging into this on my trip to Croatia. During my trips earlier in the spring, I was really leaning into codependency. I was like, I feel like there's more here. Like, this seems more dangerous than most people let on about. And the more I was reading about it, there's not a formal, official diagnosis in terms of, you know, ADHD or something of the kind that you can give for someone who is codependent. Yet looking at the wiring of the neuroses of an individual, looking at their mental pathways and looking at their MRI scans, they can see that their brain fundamentally functions differently than someone who is not codependent. And they can see how the wires adjust as the individual heals from it. So while there's not an official label, let's say, y'all, it is so, there's a rewiring of the brain that needs to occur when you're coming out of codependency. And what that did for me was like, whoa, I need to take this so seriously. This is not a cute little thing. And frankly, there was an element where I almost took a little bit of pride in the codependency for many years, where it was like, oh, I just struggle with caring too much and giving too much of myself and being so loving. No, that's actually really dangerous. It's actually really unhealthy and unwell for those I love the most, for myself, because there's always, man, there's just so much danger there. If we, and I'll probably go into this deeper on another show, and I have in the past. So I'll link to a show where I talk further about codependency, but there are severe and significant ramifications, to the point that in order for us to break free from codependency, we actually have to rewire our brain and reprogram it to see the world differently. And then in so doing, it's not just reprogramming our mind, but it's reprogramming our emotions, so that as we have these kind of automatic emotional responses that are programmed based off of data, and they're hardwired in a sense, we have to retrain those as well. So in this process of reprogramming our mind and retraining on an emotional level to effectively teach our nervous system to operate in a different way, that if someone looks at us with disdain in their eye, I actually need to tend to my nervous system, because my codependent parts would step up, step out, and take action as a result of that. Now I need to retrain that codependent part of me to respond differently in a way that probably is very unfamiliar and unknown to it. I'll give an example of this. I might get some judgment here, so we'll see what happens. So this is me sharing, and I don't know what you'll say. So I had been standing in line at Goodwill for about 40 minutes, maybe 35, 40 minutes. I had already canceled a meeting. I had these purchases for the cruise that I'm going on tomorrow. I knew that it felt like I actually really thought about it, and I was like, no, like I actually need to stand in line here. So God bless my friend who I canceled on. He was very gracious. And I was in line, and I was going to be late for an event. I'm speaking at an event hours after I land from Rome on the 22nd in DC. And so I was going to a happy hour for that. So I'm watching the timer, and I'm really trying to be present and not be on my phone and not move out of this moment and get anxious about it. So I'm being present. I'm like, no, let me just see if this works. So I asked the woman, I was like, will you hold my spot? And she said, yes. So I walk up to somebody towards the front of the line, and I'm like, if I pay for your things, will you let me jump in line with you? And he gets loud, and he's like, no, lady, you got to get in the back of the line with everybody else. We've all been standing. And I'm like, okay, never mind. Like, I'll just go back to my place. And in that moment, I just felt this desire to defend myself. I've been standing here for 30 minutes, and I have an event, and I've already canceled a meeting. And I was like, okay. And then I get back in my place in line, and I'm probably like 10 people back from him. So he doesn't see me. And I see him like talking to the people around him and like getting people riled up about how unjust. And man, y'all, it was such good practice for me, because in that moment, the codependent part of me that is so wanting other people to experience peace and love and joy and all the good positive feelings, and also to like me. That's the thing. Yes, there's the part of me that actually wants that's altruistic, that wants good things for other people. Yet what codependency does is that it shrouds the altruism, and at the nucleus of codependency. So altruism covers this nucleus of codependency, which is I need to be liked. I need to be loved. My emotional state is dependent on this other person. Y'all, this is actually really, really important for us to dive into, because as babies, we need, for our basic survival, we need our mothers to like us and feed us. There is a study done by Stanford University that it was this woman feeding her baby and like cooing at it and making eyes at it and just loving on this baby. And the baby pauses to stop eating and just like coos back, and then we'll start eating again. And then the mom, she just all of a sudden frowns and just like looks at her baby and just with a negative expression. the baby immediately stops eating and starts fussing and is like trying to get the mother's attention back. And then the second she starts smiling, the baby smiles. It is in our DNA to have emotional connection with each other. So this concept of codependency is actually really coming from this very human and raw and almost like this mammal part of us. So it's really good and really, really beautiful. And then if we want to look also at the narcissistic side, that's also kind of in our DNA. When we were babies, we would scream for the food we wanted and we would get fed, hopefully. This person walked into a friend of mine, actually. She was going to adopt a baby from an orphanage. I believe it was an Eastern European country. So they walk into the orphanage and it's dozens and dozens of babies and it is dead silent. And it was eerie. She was like, she looked to the nurse and she was like, why are the babies not making any noise? They were all staring at the ceiling, just lying there. She's like, well, we can't hold all the babies. And so at some point we just stop, they just stop because they're not getting tended to. So this element of narcissism, which is screaming for what we want and what we need, and this element of codependency of requiring the response in another's facial expression to deem that we're safe, both of those, it's just as we grow up, it's like, okay, let's just round out the edges. Let's figure out how to engage with each other in a way that's emotional maturity and emotional intelligence, is to round out the codependent and the narcissist and kind of meet in the middle where it's empathy and authenticity. Because in one sense, if you're void of all empathy and all codependence, you're going to be a very authentic person, but also very narcissistic because it's all about you. And then if you avoid all the authentic narcissistic tendencies and it's only about other people, you'll have all the empathy and all the codependency because all of your value is derived from everyone around you. So it's like on either ends of the spectrum, narcissism, codependency, and as you move further and further inward, now we're talking empathy and now we're talking authenticity. And y'all, it's amazing how these two qualities show up in every single area of our lives. It shows up in our business. It shows up with our families. These two have been the foundation of the way that I operate the Knowing Agency, the way that we work with our customers. You have to be authentic in your brand presence, knowing who you are, and then having empathy to engage with your customers. What do they care about? These two tools are really, and I say tools because we have to know how to engage them. So when I was in line today and I see this guy bad mouthing me, my nervous system activates. Something's wrong. I need to defend myself and protect myself and make him like me. And instead in that moment, I just, honestly, I tended to little Christine in me. I knew that I didn't do anything wrong. And you know what? I diverted my attention and my energy. Dr. Joe Dispenza says, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to move my thoughts off of this person and what just happened and focus it elsewhere. And immediately it's almost like it just left my mind. And so I can have this care and desire for altruism, for the good of other people. Yet the more empathy slides towards codependency, the more dangerous it becomes for me and everyone around me. And so because there was nothing for me to do in that moment, if I'm not able to take any real action to help that other person or defend my own integrity or honor, let's say, then it's let me just divert my attention and not place my energy on it. I was on a phone earlier today with a friend and they said the very same thing. It's like, I haven't been guarding my attention. And our attention, man, that is a currency. When and how often are we actually thinking about our attention as a currency? We talk about time as currency, what we're producing as a service. Obviously, there's a currency exchange there. Our attention is a currency. So the second I start fixating my attention on someone else, start getting emotionally upset about them, they now I'm actually giving them a part of me. I'm giving them a part of my emptying out of my bank of energy for today. The book, The One Thing, talks about our day is like a battery pack. We wake up, we start the day, and man, we are on full power. And over time, our energy just drains and drains and drains and drains. And every output of attention is a drainage of the energy. So the question is, where do you want your energy to go? Then, okay, now let me direct my attention there. So if I actually want to preserve and contain my energy, then I'm going to remove my attention from you. I actually had this experience hosting a knowing dinner where somebody did something that was blatantly rude to me right before we sat down. And I sat down at the head of the table and I was like, man, this is game time. This is why we put in the reps in the arena, so that in game time we can pull and kind of almost like rely on these tools that we've been working on and these muscles that we've been working out to then be able to live in the alignment of under the hierarchy of our ideal. And then that falls underneath and is subservient to the divine himself. But so I will say this little practice, this little mantra, where you place your attention is where you place your energy, came in and saved me big time in that moment. Because y'all, it is so hard if something is rubbing me the wrong way and I feel like there's an emotional disconnection with somebody else, man, that can I'm like, we have to make it right. And part of that is predicated in, on the relational side, my mom, God love her. She is amazing. She raised all 6 of us kids, stayed at home, and just one of the biggest things that she did was just really having us be together and play together, love on each other. We watched a movie maybe once a week. And anytime there was a fight, she would say, I think you guys actually need to spend more time together, which that was not what we wanted to hear in that moment. And I was actually talking with my brother this past week and my sister as well. And each one of us was talking about in our relationships, the second something goes wrong, we're like, we have to address it. We have to talk about it right now, or else resentment's going to build. And there's almost a hand holding tightly on, we've got to talk through this and work through it, because otherwise what might happen. And so there is an element of, we've got to get to this right away. So I'm sitting at the head of the table hosting the knowing dinner, and immediately that phrase from Dr. Joe Dispenza came to mind: where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And I just immediately took my mind off of that, and I actually took that moment to pray before we ate and just refocus my attention and thus my energy. And at one point throughout the meal, it came back to mind, and it was just like, nope, not going to even think about it, not going to place my attention there. And it kept me so aligned, so that at the end of the dinner, I could hug that person and really mean it. And it was so powerful, just knowing like we actually have control of our minds. We have control of our emotional states. We have complete and utter control, but we need to learn how to go into the arena, do the work, put in these reps, so that when it's game time, whether it's a girl I actually was doing this, the knowing arena with, she mentioned how after we've been working together for a couple of weeks, she was like, I was leaving to go out the door and we were late, and my 3rd son drops a snow globe. Water pours everywhere. All the little snow is everywhere. And she just took a deep breath and she said, all right, we're going to clean this up and then we're going to get in the car and go. And she said that was just such a pivotal moment, because in the past that would have totally derailed their day. She would have, everyone would have been upset and they would have been yelling, and it just would have been, man, such a miserable, not just moment, but the rest of the evening. And it would have ruined so many potentially beautiful moments. And it was just really cool to see in action what we do in the arena played out in real time can change the trajectory of our life, change the trajectory of our relationships. And so all that to say, this very question that we're talking about, am I living afraid? Am I living afraid of that person and their scowl towards me? Am I living afraid of what will happen if I don't live in that box? The box that was set before me by religion, by my family, by competitors. What are the competitors doing? And if I operate differently, what will happen? Y'all, it's been really important in my business that I actually am not taking everyone else's advice. I woke up at 2 a.m. in France and had this revelation: I need to go live every day. And I just knew it. And over time, as I've been going live, I've seen other people start, or maybe they were doing it, and I'm sure that there's lots of people who are going live before me, but it wasn't like there was someone in my network that I knew that that's what I should do. And I mentioned it to a number of people close to me, and no one liked the idea, but I just knew that that was something I needed to do. The more we're operating off of the desired pleasure and praise of others as a key metric, it can be a metric. Sometimes that's a good putting your finger up to the wind and saying, okay, is this heading in the right direction? But y'all, if the praise and accolades of others is really what we're chasing, that is a dangerous path. Tonight I was at an event, and I'm going to be speaking there in a couple weeks, and we were just talking, and the guy was like, oh, you need to be on stages more. When you get on stage, and then he talks to me all about the value of being on stage. And he's not wrong. And he barely knew anything about me or my business. And so to be able to say that so strongly, that might be exactly what he needs to do. And that's wonderful. And maybe that actually is what I need to do as well. Yet it's so important that for each one of us, after, for example, if he gives me that advice, you should be speaking on more stages. Taking that, it's what we do after. It's what we do after we see the scout, after we receive the advice, after we see what our clients are doing or what our clients are asking for, what our competitors, their advertising campaigns. What then? There's this question of how then shall I live? And that is the entire premise of my book, Knowing. How then shall I live? After my husband leaves, after my world falls apart, after, yes, my business is going well, and yet that I don't even care in one sense. All I wanted was this beautiful future that we dreamed about together. I saw a picture today. We were meeting with the family painting business, and I saw this picture of the house that my former husband and I had purchased, and we completely renovated it. We bumped the wall out 2 feet, knocked down 3 walls. It was just beautiful. It was just such a complete transformation. And I saw those pictures today, and I was like, oh, like that was the dream. And I love the life I'm creating. I'm so grateful for it. And that's still there. There's still so much more of this question of grieving the past, sure, but how now will I live? And I love the life I'm creating. I love it. I love every part of it. I'm honestly really, really loving. So this how then. So I get this advice. You should be speaking on stage more. Awesome. I see you on Facebook saying you do need to be on stage more. I get this advice. You need to be on stage more. Okay, how then am I going to live? I get this devastating news. Okay, how then am I going to live? I get an angry glance from somebody else. How am I going to live? Y'all, every single moment we are making a decision in response to this question, how then will I live? And when we talk about building our brands, every single one of us has a brand, whether we like it or not, whether we're building it or not. We have a brand. We have values that we live by. We have beliefs that we adhere to and orient every single decision by. So the question is, are we doing it with intention? Are we the ones holding the paintbrush, or is somebody else the one doing so? Because we gave them power, we gave them control so long ago that we don't even realize it. And y'all, it is so important that we realize we have also given power away, not just in the way that we're showing up as a husband or wife or father or mother, but we're also potentially giving our power away in the way we show up as a business owner. Are you living according to your dreams? Are you actually doing what you feel called to? Or are you building someone else's vision? And this is so important. And so this question of how would I live if I wasn't afraid? How then would I live if I wasn't afraid? And that's what I've been asking myself. What would I do? And one of the biggest things that I'm choosing to do is to make emotional intelligence a core part of the craft and calling community and the direction we're going. And it's going to turn people away and probably really repel them, and they will likely hate it. And if I was to do anything otherwise, I would not be being true to what I feel called to. That's the intersection of authenticity and empathy. Empathy means I can be like, oh, shoot. I love these people. I'm sad that they're being turned away. And I have to stay rooted in the authentic call that I feel from within. So if we're not sourcing from within and we're only sourcing from without, and thus consequently, we're outsourcing our beliefs, our actions, our behaviors, our mindsets, we'll never know if we're actually living authentic to begin with. So we have to go inward. We have to identify the sources. Is that mine or was that handed to me? Is this an inherited belief or was this handed to me or is it something I now choose? I was on the phone with my best friend tonight and we were talking about Viktor Frankl. The greatest of all human freedoms is choice. He is literally speaking this and realizing this in Nazi concentration camp, in the very most desolate of all places. We have the choice. We have the freedom. And the question is, are we living accordingly? We are probably the most free people. You and me right now, if you're sitting on a computer watching this, then you and I are probably both very, very free in terms of the ability to make a choice. And you know what? Even for those who are not free, like Viktor Frankl, he had the power of choice. And so, how then will I live? How then will I live if I'm not afraid? And only you can answer that. Only I can answer that. And we can only answer it by going inward and going into the arena to ensure that we're actually putting in the reps and building out the muscles and creating the person that we need to be so that when it's game time, our lives actually reflect our ideal and that person that we've been working towards. So my question for you, and this question I'm asking for myself is, how then would you live if you were to live unafraid? So